The massive alien warrior stood in the center of the arena floor and flexed his four powerful arms. The crowd went wild as they saw their favorite fighter. Commander Vextar's crimson-red scales caught the bright lights that shone down from above. His body was huge and scary, standing 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel like paper. For 12 long years he had been the champion of the Galactic Combat League, and no one had ever beaten him. Vextar looked around the arena at all the different alien species that had come to watch him fight. There were blue-skinned Trilaxians with their long tentacle arms. There were the rock-like granite people from the mining worlds. There were even some of the floating gas creatures from the outer rim planets. All of them cheered his name and waved banners with his picture on them. He was the most famous warrior in the entire galaxy. The arena announcer spoke through the loudspeakers in dozens of different alien languages today. There would be a special fight. The challenger came from a newly discovered planet called Earth. The species was called humans, and they had only recently joined the galactic community. Most aliens had never heard of humans before, and the few who had thought they were weak and primitive. Vextar walked back to his private preparation room where his assistant Zek was waiting. Zek was a small, nervous creature with purple skin and big yellow eyes. "Sir, the human challenger has arrived," Zek said, in a shaky voice. "His name is Kim Deho and he looks very young. The intelligence reports say humans are not very strong." The commander laughed loudly. "Humans," he said, shaking his massive head. "I have fought warriors from every known species in the galaxy. I have defeated the strongest fighters from the ice worlds, the desert planets, and the jungle moons. Now they bring me a human child. This will be over before it begins." Vextar looked at the video screen that showed information about his opponent. Kim Deho was only 18 years old in human terms. He stood about 6 feet tall, which was small compared to most galactic warriors. His skin was pale and he had dark hair and dark eyes. He looked thin and fragile, like he might break if someone pushed him too hard. The reports about humans were not impressive. They came from a small blue and green planet in a quiet part of the galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years behind the advanced civilizations. Their weapons were basic, and their military seemed almost like a joke compared to the great galactic armies. Humans had only 2 arms instead of 4, like Vextar. They had no natural armor and no claws or fangs for fighting. "Why would the League waste my time with such a weak opponent?" Vextar wondered aloud. "Maybe they think I need an easy victory to make the crowds happy. But this is insulting. A real warrior needs real challenges, not practice fights against children." Zek brought him his weapons, 4 curved blades that had been made from the hardest metals in the galaxy. Each blade was sharp enough to cut through battle armor, and long enough to reach any opponent. Vextar had used these same weapons to defeat champions from every major species. He knew exactly how to use them to end fights quickly. The time came for both fighters to enter the arena. The crowd noise was so loud it made the walls shake. 50,000 aliens from across the galaxy had come to see this fight. Many had traveled for days or weeks to be here. The betting pools had all the money on Vextar with odds of 100 to 1 against the human. Vextar walked out onto the fighting platform with confident steps. His 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, showing off his incredible speed and control. The crowd cheered even louder when they saw him. He raised all 4 weapons above his head and roared a battle cry that echoed through the entire stadium. Then the human came out. Kim Deho walked slowly onto the platform wearing simple fighting clothes that looked almost primitive compared to the advanced gear other species used. He carried 2 basic-looking weapons that seemed like toys next to Vextar's mighty blades. The human was so much smaller that he looked like a child standing next to the massive alien warrior. The crowd grew quiet. Some people started to boo because they thought this was unfair. Others laughed because they could not believe someone so small would dare to fight the great Vextar. A few began to feel sorry for the young human who was clearly about to be hurt very badly. But Vextar noticed something strange about the human's eyes. Most opponents showed fear when they first saw him. Some tried to hide it, but he could always tell Kim Deho showed no fear at all. Instead, his dark eyes studied Vextar like he was looking at a puzzle he wanted to solve. The human stood very still and calm, like he was not worried about what was going to happen. The floating referee robot explained the rules to both fighters. They would fight until one of them could not continue. The winner would be declared when their opponent surrendered, gave up, or was unable to move. No outside help was allowed, and both fighters could only use the weapons they brought. With them, Vextar decided he would end this fight quickly and cleanly. He did not want to hurt the brave but foolish human boy too badly. The crowd deserved to see a good show, but there was no point in being cruel to someone who was clearly outmatched. He would use just enough force to win without causing permanent damage. The countdown began. 10 seconds until the fight would start. Vextar got ready to charge forward and end this in one swift attack. 9 seconds. The crowd held its breath. 8 seconds. Kim Dae-ho took a small step backward, but his eyes never left Vextar's face. 7 seconds. The human shifted his weight slightly like he was getting ready to move. 6 seconds. 5 seconds. Vextar coiled his muscles like a spring ready to explode into action. 4 seconds. The arena lights seemed to get brighter. 3 seconds. Some people in the crowd started to look away because they did not want to see what was about to happen. 2 seconds. Kim Dae-ho took a deep breath and his grip tightened on his weapons. 1 second. The battle horn sounded. Vextar launched himself forward with all the speed and power that had made him champion for 12 years. His forearms swung in perfect timing, each blade aimed to disable his opponent. Without killing him, he expected to end this fight with his first attack just like he had ended so many others. But when his weapons reached the spot where Kim Dae-ho had been standing, the human was not there anymore. The crowd gasped in surprise, as they saw the small human had somehow avoided all 4 of Vextar's lightning-fast attacks. Kim Dae-ho had moved like smoke, slipping between the deadly blades, with movements that seemed impossible for someone so small and apparently weak. Vextar spun around looking for his opponent and felt a sharp pain in his left leg. He looked down and saw a thin line of green blood running down his scale-covered skin. The human had somehow gotten behind him and made a precise cut that found the one small gap in his natural armor. For the first time in 12 years, Commander Vextar realized he might be in real trouble. Kim Dae-ho moved like water flowing around rocks as Commander Vextar spun around trying to find him. The massive alien warrior was confused and angry. His 4 powerful arms lashed out in all directions, but somehow the small human kept slipping. Away from every attack, the crowd watched in amazement, as their unbeatable champion struggled to even touch his opponent. Vextar had never faced anyone who moved like this before. Most fighters tried to match his strength or speed, but Kim Dae-ho was doing something completely different. The human seemed to know where each attack was going before Vextar even started to move. It was like the boy could read his mind and see the future. The green blood from Vextar's wounded leg dripped onto the arena sand. Each drop reminded him that this weak-looking human had already done something no other fighter had managed in 12 years. Kim Dae-ho had hurt him. The wound was small, but it was in exactly the right place to cause pain and slow him down. How did this primitive creature know about that weakness? Vextar wondered. Every species in the galaxy had studied his fighting style for years. None of them had found that tiny gap in his armor. Yet this human boy had spotted it in seconds and struck with perfect accuracy. Kim Dae-ho stayed just out of reach, moving in a circle around the much larger opponent. His dark eyes never stopped watching and studying Vextar's movements. The human held his simple weapons ready, but he was not trying to attack. Yet instead, he seemed to be learning everything he could about how the alien champion fought. The crowd was getting excited now. They had come expecting to see Vextar win easily in a few seconds. Instead, they were watching the most interesting fight in years. Some aliens started cheering for Kim Dae-ho even though they had never heard of humans before. The boy was giving them a show they would never forget. Vextar decided to try a different approach. He stopped chasing the human and instead waited for Kim Dae-ho to come to him. Let the boy attack first, then counter with overwhelming force. It was a strategy that had worked against many quick opponents in the past. But Kim Dae-ho did not attack. Instead, he kept moving in his careful circle, staying just far enough away to be safe. The human seemed perfectly happy to wait as long as necessary. This patience frustrated Vextar even more. Most fighters were eager to prove themselves and would make mistakes when they got impatient. Minutes passed and the crowd grew more restless. They wanted action. But Kim Dae-ho refused to give them what they expected. The human was playing a completely different game than anyone had seen before. He was not trying to win quickly or show off his skills. He was hunting like a predator that had all the time in the world. Finally, Vextar could not stand the waiting anymore. He charged forward again, using all four arms in a spinning attack that should have been impossible to avoid. The blades cut through the air so fast they made whistling sounds. The attack covered every possible escape route the human could take. Kim Dae-ho dropped to the ground and rolled between Vextar's legs, coming up behind the alien warrior once again. Before the commander could turn around, the human struck twice more. His blade found another small gap in the armor under Vextar's right arm, and then a third cut appeared on the back of his neck. The crowd exploded with cheering and shouting. They could not believe what they were seeing. The great Vextar was bleeding from 3 wounds now, and the human boy looked like he had barely broken a sweat. Kim Dae-ho moved back to his safe distance and continued his patient circling. Vextar was starting to breathe harder. Now his massive body was built for quick, powerful victories, not long, drawn-out battles. The wounds were not deep enough to stop him, but they hurt, and they were bleeding steadily. Each cut had been placed perfectly to cause maximum pain, while avoiding anything that might end the fight too quickly. The human was playing with him. Vextar realized with growing anger. Kim Dae-ho was not trying to win as fast as possible. He was taking his time and enjoying the hunt. This was not how warriors were supposed to fight. There should be honor and respect, not this cruel game of cat and mouse. But there was something else that bothered Vextar even more. Kim Dae-ho was getting faster. The human had started the fight moving well, but now he seemed to be moving even better. His reactions were quicker. His footwork was smoother and his attacks were more precise. It was like he was learning and improving with every second that passed. Most fighters got tired and sloppy as a battle went on. Kim Dae-ho was doing the opposite. The boy seemed to be getting stronger and more confident. The longer the fight lasted, the more dangerous he became. This went against everything Vextar knew about combat and physical limits. The alien champion tried to think of a new strategy, but his anger was making it hard to concentrate. All he wanted to do was catch this slippery human and crush him with his bare hands, but every time he thought he had Kim Dae-ho trapped, the boy would slip away like smoke and leave another small wound behind. The crowd was chanting now. Some called Vextar's name, but more and more were shouting for Kim Dae-ho. They had never seen anything like this before. An unknown fighter from a primitive world was making their greatest champion look slow and clumsy. It was the kind of upset that people would talk about for generations. Blood was running down Vextar's body from 6 different cuts now. None of them were serious by themselves, but together they were starting to weaken him. His movements were getting slightly slower and his attacks were not quite as accurate as before. Kim Dae-ho seemed to notice every small change and took advantage of each one. The human finally spoke for the first time since the fight began. "You are strong," he said in perfect Galactic common language. "But strength without wisdom is just violence. You fight like a storm. Loud and powerful, but storms always end." Vextar roared in fury at the insult. How dare this child lecture him about fighting? He had been a warrior since before Kim Dae-ho was born. He had defeated champions from every corner of the galaxy. This human boy knew nothing about real combat. But even as he raged, Vextar had to admit the truth. Kim Dae-ho was winning. The human had turned what should have been an easy victory into a nightmare. The boy was faster, smarter, and more patient than any opponent Vextar had ever faced. The worst part was that Kim Dae-ho still looked calm and relaxed while Vextar was getting tired and frustrated. The human moved like this was just a training exercise while the alien champion was putting everything he had into every attack. It was humiliating. As the fight continued, Vextar began to understand that he was not just losing. He was being hunted by a predator that was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The human boy was not the weak, primitive creature the reports had described. Kim Dae-ho was something else entirely, and Vextar was in serious trouble. Kim Dae-ho had been watching Vextar very carefully from the moment he entered the arena. The human boy saw things that others missed. Every small movement, every tiny hesitation, Every pattern in the alien warrior's fighting style was being recorded and analyzed in his mind. This was how humans hunted on Earth, not with brute force but with intelligence and patience. While the crowd saw only a brave young fighter facing impossible odds, Kim Dae-ho saw something very different. He saw an opponent who relied too much on his natural advantages. Vextar was strong and fast and had 4 arms, but he fought the same way against every enemy. The alien champion had become predictable, and predictable opponents could be defeated. The human had trained his entire life for moments like this. In the mountains of Korea, he had studied with masters who taught him that every creature had weaknesses. Even the strongest predators could be brought down by smaller, smarter hunters who knew how to wait for the right moment. The key was to understand your enemy better than they understood themselves. Vextar was getting frustrated, and that was exactly what Kim Dae-ho wanted. Angry fighters made mistakes. They stopped thinking clearly and started relying on emotion instead of strategy. The alien was powerful enough to win if he stayed calm and used his advantages properly. But Kim Dae-ho was making sure that would not happen. The human began to change his tactics slightly. Instead of just avoiding attacks, he started to guide them. He moved in ways that made Vextar strike at empty air or hit the arena walls. This wasted the alien's energy while teaching Kim Dae-ho even more about his opponent's fighting patterns. Every failed attack gave him new information to use. The crowd was completely focused on the fight now. They had never seen anything like this before. Their greatest champion was being slowly worn down by someone who looked like he should have been crushed in the first few seconds. Some aliens were starting to wonder if they had been wrong about humans. Maybe this species was more dangerous than anyone had realized. Kim Dae-ho struck again, this time cutting Vextar's left shoulder. The wound was deeper than the others and green. Blood flowed more freely. The human was getting more aggressive as he learned exactly where and how to hurt his opponent. Each cut was placed with surgical precision, designed to weaken without immediately ending the fight. Vextar tried to grab Kim Dae-ho with all 4 arms at once. It was a desperate move that left him completely exposed for a moment. The human slid between the grasping limbs and struck 3 times in quick succession. 2 cuts to the ribs and 1 to the back of the knee. Vextar stumbled and nearly fell before catching himself. The alien champion was breathing heavily now. His natural armor was designed to stop most weapons, but Kim Dae-ho's blade seemed to find every tiny gap and weak point. The human fought like he had studied Vextar's species for years, yet this was supposed to be first contact between their civilizations. How do you know where to strike? Vextar gasped between attacks. No one has ever found those spots before. Kim Dae-ho did not answer immediately. He was too focused on avoiding another desperate assault from the wounded alien. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "Every living thing has patterns," he said. "Your body moves the way evolution designed it. Those patterns create weaknesses, if you know how to look." The crowd heard this exchange, and many aliens felt a chill run through them. The human boy was talking about their species, like specimens he had studied. The way he analyzed Vextar's movements suggested an intelligence that was cold and calculating. Nothing like the primitive savages they had expected. Vextar launched himself forward in another rage-fueled attack. His 4 blades moved in a complex pattern that had defeated dozens of champions in the past. But Kim Dae-ho was ready. The human had seen this same combination of moves several times now and knew exactly how to counter it. The boy moved like liquid mercury flowing around the deadly weapons and striking back with perfect timing. By the time Vextar's attack was finished, he had 3 new wounds, and Kim Dae-ho was standing safely out of reach again. The alien warrior was starting to realize that he was being outfought by someone who understood combat on a deeper level than he did. Blood loss was beginning. To affect Vextar's performance, his movements were getting slower, and his coordination was not as perfect as before. Kim Dae-ho noticed every small change and adjusted his tactics accordingly. The human was like a computer that learned and adapted with every second that passed. The most frightening thing about Kim Dae-ho was not his speed or skill. It was his endurance. While Vextar was getting tired and weak, the human seemed to be getting stronger. His breathing was still steady. His movements were still precise and his focus never wavered. It was like he could fight forever if necessary. This was the result of years of brutal training on Earth. Kim Dae-ho had pushed his body beyond normal human limits. He had run up mountains carrying heavy packs. He had practiced fighting techniques for hours without rest. He had learned to ignore pain and fatigue until his will became stronger than his physical limitations. The crowd was starting to understand that they were watching something historic. This was not just a fight. It was a demonstration of what humans could do when they were properly trained and motivated. Some aliens began to worry about what this meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. If one human boy could do this, what could millions of them accomplish? Vexstar made one final desperate attempt to win. He gathered all his remaining strength and launched the most powerful attack he had ever used. All 4 weapons moved in a deadly spiral that should have been impossible to survive. The alien put everything he had into this last chance at victory. Kim Dae-ho watched the attack coming and smiled slightly. The human had been waiting for Vexstar to try something like this. When an opponent was desperate, they often exposed themselves completely in hopes of landing one decisive blow. But desperate attacks were also predictable, and Kim Dae-ho had already planned his response. The boy moved with fluid grace, stepping inside Vexstar's guard. While the alien was committed to his attack, Kim Dae-ho struck once with perfect precision, his blade finding the exact spot that would end this fight. The crowd held its breath as they realized their champion was about to fall. Vexstar felt the human weapon pierce his armor and knew immediately that he had lost. The pain was incredible, but worse was the knowledge that he had been beaten by someone half his size. Kim Dae-ho had not just defeated him, the boy had made it look easy. This was not how the fight was supposed to end as darkness closed in around him. Vexstar had one final thought. The humans were not the primitive species everyone believed them to be. They were something much more dangerous. And the galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Time seemed to move in slow motion as Kim Dae-ho saw the perfect opening he had been waiting for. Vexstar had put everything into his final desperate attack, leaving his core completely unprotected. The alien warriors' 4 arms were extended in their killing pattern. But this also meant he could not defend himself. For the human who had been trained since childhood to see such moments, this was exactly what he needed. Kim Dae-ho moved with the fluid precision of a master craftsman. His blade found the narrow gap between Vexstar's primary and secondary armor plates sliding upward at the exact angle needed to reach vital organs. The human had studied the alien anatomy during their fight learning, where each species kept their most important body parts. Vexstar's eyes went wide with shock and pain as he felt the human weapon pierce through his natural defenses. The blade was small compared to his own weapons, but it had been placed with surgical accuracy. The alien champion felt his strength flowing out of him like water from a broken container. The crowd erupted in chaos. 50,000 beings from across the galaxy jumped to their feet, screaming in disbelief. The impossible had just happened before their eyes. Their greatest champion, the warrior who had seemed unbeatable for 12 years, was falling to his knees before a human boy that most of them had never heard of until today. Kim Dae-ho stepped back and pulled his weapon free in one smooth motion. He showed no emotion on his face, no satisfaction or cruelty in his victory. The human had done what was necessary to win, but he took no pleasure in causing pain. This calm reaction impressed many in the crowd who had expected him to celebrate or boast. Vexstar collapsed, forward catching himself with his 4 arms before he hit the ground completely. Green blood pooled beneath him as he struggled to stay conscious. The alien warrior looked up at Kim Dae-ho with something that might have been respect mixed with his pain and confusion. How the mighty Vexstar whispered through gritted teeth. "How did you know where to strike?" Kim Dae-ho knelt down so he could speak quietly to his fallen opponent. "Every species evolves differently," he said in a gentle voice, "but life always finds similar solutions. Your people developed armor to protect what matters most. That same armor creates channels that guide an attacker's blade to the right place if they know how to look." The human paused and then added something that surprised everyone who could hear. "Your fighting style is based on overwhelming force. It works against most enemies, but it leaves you open to someone who fights with patience. You are a storm, I am a river. Storms are louder, but rivers cut deeper. Vexstar tried to laugh, but coughed up green blood instead. A river, he repeated. You humans are more dangerous than we thought. If one of you can do this, what can your armies accomplish? Kim Deho did not answer that question. Instead, he stood up and raised his hand to show the crowd that the fight was over. He had won, but he showed no arrogance or pride. The human boy understood that this victory would change everything for his people, and he felt the weight of that responsibility. The floating referee, Robot, announced the results in dozens of languages. Kim Deho of Earth was declared the winner and new champion of the Galactic Combat League. The crowd noise was deafening as aliens tried to process what they had just witnessed. Some cheered for the amazing upset while others sat in stunned silence. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to help Vexstar. The alien warrior was seriously wounded but would survive. Kim Deho had been careful to avoid striking anything that would cause permanent damage or death. This mercy did not go unnoticed by the watching crowd, who began to understand that humans possessed honor as well as deadly skill. In the VIP boxes high above the arena floor, ambassadors and military leaders from dozens of species watched Kim Deho with new eyes. They had dismissed Earth as a backwater planet full of primitive beings, but this young human had just proven that assessment catastrophically wrong. General Thrax of the Zephyrian Empire leaned forward in his seat, studying every detail of the human boy. If this is what their children can do, he muttered to his aide, what are their soldiers capable of? We may have made a serious error in our intelligence gathering. Ambassador Quinn of the Trade Federation was already composing messages to send back to her homeworld. The economic implications of human capabilities were staggering. If they could fight like this, what other talents were they hiding? Their technology might be primitive now, but clearly their potential was enormous. Kim Deho walked slowly around the arena, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew that word of this victory would spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every major civilization would be reassessing their policies toward Earth and humanity. The human boy had trained his entire life for moments like this, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of what his victory meant. He had not just won a fight. He had announced to the galaxy that humans were a force to be reckoned with. Some species would want to become allies. Others would see them as threats to be eliminated. As medical teams finished treating Vexstar and helped him off the arena floor, the alien champion managed to catch Kim Deho's eye one more time. The two warriors looked at each other with mutual respect. Despite being enemies in the arena, they both understood the honor of combat. You fought well, young human, Vexstar said as he was carried past on a medical stretcher. Your people should be proud. Kim. Deho bowed slightly in response. You are a great warrior, he replied. I was honored to face you in battle. Perhaps when you have healed, we can train together and learn from each other. This exchange was broadcast across the galaxy, and many aliens noted the respect and courtesy both fighters showed. This was not the behavior of savage primitives, but of sophisticated beings who understood honor and diplomacy. Even in victory, the human showed grace and wisdom. The arena began to empty as spectators headed home to spread word of what they had seen. Kim Deho remained on the fighting platform for a few more minutes, looking up at the stars visible through the arena's open roof. He knew that his life and the life of every human had just changed forever. The boy from Earth had proven that his species belonged among the great civilizations of the galaxy. But with that recognition would come new challenges and dangers. Kim Deho had won the first battle, but he suspected that much harder fights lay ahead for humanity. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and now everyone would know that humans could be dangerous too. The news of Vexstar's defeat traveled through hyperspace communication networks at the speed of light, reaching every major civilization in the galaxy within hours. On 1,000 different worlds, military commanders, politicians, and scientists gathered in emergency meetings to discuss what Kim Deho's victory meant for the future of galactic politics. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Koth watched the arena footage for the 20th time. His blue-skinned face showed deep concern as he studied every movement the human boy had made. The Zephyrians prided themselves on being the greatest tactical minds in the galaxy, But even Koth had to admit that Kim Dae-ho's fighting style was unlike anything in their military databases. Send word to our intelligence division. Koth ordered his subordinates, I want every piece of information we can find about Earth and its inhabitants. If one of their children can fight like this, what can their trained soldiers do? We may need to completely revise our defense strategies. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of other worlds. The Granite People's Military Council reviewed their own combat techniques, wondering if their reliance on heavy armor and brute strength would be effective against enemies who fought like Kim Dae-ho. The floating gas beings of the nebula worlds questioned whether their aerial advantages would matter against opponents who seemed able to predict and counter any attack. On Earth itself, the reaction was very different. Kim Dae-ho's family home in Seoul was surrounded by reporters, military recruiters, and government officials. His parents tried to maintain some normalcy, but it was impossible when their son had just become the most famous human in the galaxy overnight. His sister Kim Minji watched the news coverage with growing worry. She knew her brother better than anyone and understood that Dae-ho had never wanted to be a symbol or a weapon. He had trained in martial arts because he loved the discipline and the challenge now. The whole world wanted to turn him into something he was not. General Park Ho-jin of Earth's newly formed Interstellar Defense Force convened an emergency meeting of world leaders in Geneva. The general had been preparing for this moment. Ever since first contact with alien civilizations, he knew that eventually humanity would need to prove itself on the galactic stage. But he had hoped they would have more time, ladies and gentlemen, Park said to the assembled presidents and prime ministers. Kim Dae-ho's victory has changed everything. The other species now know that we are not the primitive weaklings they believed us to be. This brings both opportunities and dangers that we must address immediately. The president of Korea spoke. First, my country is proud of what young Kim has accomplished, but we are concerned about the attention he has brought to our world. What if hostile species decide that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist? It is a valid concern, Park replied, but we always knew this day would come. We cannot hide our capabilities forever. The question now is how we use this opportunity to secure humanity's place in the galactic community. Meanwhile, in secret military bases around the world, thousands of other humans who had been quietly training for years suddenly found themselves in high demand. Kim Dae-ho had not been the only one preparing for interstellar competition. Lee Soo-jin had been dominating racing circuits on distant worlds using her incredible reflexes and spatial awareness to outfly alien pilots who had centuries more experience. Choi Hyun-woo had been making a name for himself in intellectual competitions across the galaxy. His ability to solve complex problems and learn new concepts quickly had impressed alien scientists who were now beginning to wonder if human intelligence was as primitive as they had assumed. These other humans now faced the same challenges as Kim Dae-ho. Word was spreading that Earth had been hiding the true extent of its people's capabilities. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humans might be far more advanced than their technology suggested, at least in terms of individual potential. On the distant world of Kraxon High Commander Zeloth studied intelligence reports about Earth with growing alarm. His species had been planning to expand into human territory within the next few decades, assuming that the primitive humans would offer little resistance. Now those plans were being completely reconsidered. If their children can defeat our greatest champions, Zeloth mused to his war council, what will happen when we face their armies? Perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact instead of conquest. This conversation was being repeated in DONA military headquarters across the galaxy. Species that had seen Earth as easy prey were now wondering if humans might actually be dangerous enemies. Others began to consider the benefits of having such capable beings as allies rather than opponents. Economic implications were equally staggering. Trade Federation analysts realized that they had completely underestimated human potential. If humans could excel in combat and racing and intellectual pursuits, what other hidden talents did they possess? Their primitive-looking technology might conceal innovations that could revolutionize galactic commerce. Ambassador Quinn's report to the Federation Council was blunt. We have made a serious error in our assessment of Earth and its inhabitants. I recommend immediate diplomatic outreach to establish trade agreements before other civilizations gain advantages we cannot match. Back on Earth, Kim Dae-ho tried to process the flood of messages coming from across the galaxy. Some were challenges from warriors, who wanted to test themselves against the new champion. Others were threats from species who saw humans as a growing danger. A few were offers of alliance from civilizations that wanted to align themselves with what they now perceived as a rising power. Each message reminded him that his actions in the arena had consequences far beyond personal victory. His sister Minji called him on a secure communication link from Seoul. Her voice carried worry rather than celebration. "The whole world is talking about you," she said, but her tone was serious. "Military recruiters are camping outside our house. Politicians want to use you as a symbol. Intelligence services from 6 different countries want to debrief you. Dae-ho, what have you gotten us into?" The question haunted him because he knew the answer. By defeating Vexstar so completely, he had revealed humanity's true potential to a galaxy that might not be ready for such revelations. Humans were not the weak, primitive species they appeared to be. They were apex predators from a world that had forged them through millions of years of competition and survival. Every human carried the genetic legacy of ancestors who had outlasted ice ages, outfought dangerous predators, and conquered every environment on their planet. They had evolved not just intelligence but the patience, persistence, and adaptability that made them incredibly dangerous opponents when properly motivated. General Park was already implementing protocols that had been developed in secret for decades. Human military units were being deployed to key locations throughout the galaxy, no longer hiding their capabilities. Diplomatic missions were being restructured to project strength rather than harmless curiosity. Masquerade was over, and humanity was preparing to claim its rightful place among the galactic powers. The question now was whether the other species would accept humans as equals, or whether Kim Dae-ho's victory would ultimately lead to the war that Earth's leaders had been trying so desperately to avoid. As reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy, one thing became clear: the age of human expansion among the stars was about to begin, and it would be led by individuals who had proven that they feared nothing because they had already faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious.